Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Career Coach RX podcast. Oh, wow. We are officially have changed our name to the WORxK Solutions Career Coach RX podcast. And I am so delighted to have my guest today, Mrs. Danita Turner. And as you guys know, we have just taken it upon ourselves to interview inspiring people who are motivating others and changing mindsets. And Ms. Turner, after 24 years in education, she supports educational leaders with creating healthy work cultures by reducing stress and toxicity. She works to improve emotional intelligence and overall wellness by prioritizing self-care and social emotional learning. So, Danita, we are very excited to have you on today, and I'm going to hand this over to you. I'm going to hand the mic over to you, my virtual mic, so that you can tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started. I always like to say, as you're telling us your story, I'm listening for questions, but be sure to include in there that bit of inspiration that motivated you to do the work that you do today. And
thank you so much, Dr. Christy. I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored to be here, and I love to be able to spread the mission of my work. Yes, I am the founder and lead learning facilitator at Manifest Education Solutions Group. And I work to help and support women who are high-performing women who are in the workforce. I work to help take them from being fizzled out to fired up by helping them to create those healthy work environments. And I use a framework for them to be able to take back into their leadership to make sure that they are able to achieve their personal and their professional goals without unhealthy self-sacrifice, burnout, overwhelm. So that's the work that I do. And I fell into that work. I was called to that work by my own experiences in leadership. I am a former educator of 24 years, about 12 of those years in leadership in elementary and middle school. And it's such an honor to be a leader. And it was a phenomenal chapter in my book that allowed me to be here now, that led me to be here now. During that time, I was leading a Title I building. And I came into a Title I building that had not had a principal longer than 3 years. They had a very high turnover of principals, let's just say that. And I was there 7 years. And so during that 7 years, we were able to transform the culture. I was able to lead the building out of academic emergency in 3 years, and doing that by not just focusing on sound instruction, not just focusing on the children, but I made it a point to make sure that we're focusing on changing adult behavior, making sure that we are changing the culture of the building so we can achieve our goals. So all of the academics and the data and all the awards and accolades that come from reaching your goals, that's not the priority. The priority is making sure that you're well, your building is well, your team is well. And so what I did is make sure to focus on leading from a wellness perspective through a wellness lens. And during that time, while we were growing and achieving those goals and getting out of academic emergency within 3 years by focusing on adult social emotional learning, emotional intelligence, strengthening your emotional intelligence muscle, being more self-aware, being more in tune with yourself and how you communicate with others, incorporating restorative practices into the culture of the building to facilitate healing, to give voice to the team, etc. All of those things I incorporated into the building. It was necessary for the culture of the building, and it's what allowed us to get out of academic emergency into independent state status. We didn't just make growth. We went from all the way at the bottom to the top, okay? So all of that work, it was awesome, achieved the goals, started to transform the culture of the building. And during that time, your girl ended up achieving a state of burnout. Or I'm sorry, not during that time, but after that, some years after that. still, when you're working with adults who may not buy into the principles of restorative work or social emotional learning, if they don't buy into those principles, it can sometimes negatively affect the team. And it can take a lot of emotion. It takes a lot more of you to be able to transform that building. And it's a lot of work, and it's good work, but if you are not focused on the right things and focused on a right framework to lead without burning out, you can go ahead and find yourself in a state of burnout. And so since I found myself in that state of burnout, I did back away from education for a while, and I saw that there's still a need. There's still a need to transform healthy work cultures. I'm still hearing about educators that are ill because of stress, because of the burdens that come with education, because of all the barriers, sometimes the lack of support. So making sure that trying to fill that gap for educators is important, making sure that they're healthy and they're whole. And I wanted to go back and pay it forward to make sure that I'm being that gap. I'm one of the solutions to be able to fill that gap, to help leaders and help their leadership, and to give them that framework so they're also able to get their buildings out of academic emergency, or they're able to take their buildings to whatever goal it is that you have for your building, whatever those goals are in your school improvement plan, being able to reach them by going through the framework to make sure that you are focused on on wellness first. So did that. And during that work, when I first started off, I began to hear more stories about women in leadership who were at the point of suicide. They were at the point of suicide because of the amount of burnout that they were experiencing, the amount of inequities that they were experiencing. One professional woman said, suicide felt like rest.
Wow.
That was a letter she wrote. And before she decided to...
was this the recent young lady at the institution?
That's a different one.
Wow.
And yes. Do you see what I'm saying? And there's more and more women that I'm hearing about that are experiencing these stages where they feel like they're so helpless and it's hopeless what they're experiencing in their professional environment, because they want to fulfill their passion, they want to fulfill their calling, but there's these things that keep coming at them that try to deter them away from their mission and their goal, and unfortunately they gave up because they did not feel like they had support. So the more I came across women like that, that's what just propelled me to go all in. And I'm absolutely dedicated, and I advocate for high performing women in leadership and education to be able to fulfill their passion without burning out, without feeling hopeless, and without feeling helpless.
One of the things I really like, because Danita, this is not our first go round, right? I initially came to you because I wanted to be in your summit. Focusing on supporting educators in general, right, in these leadership positions with burnout. And one of the things with your own story and listening to you, and I'm sure that when you're talking to your clients and you're running your workshops and retreats, it's not something that sneaks up on you, right? The idea of burnout, the concept. So when you talk about it didn't just like all of a sudden happen. You might have all of a sudden recognized it, right? But over time, as leaders and as educators, we are so passionate about the work that we're doing that we often give to others literally our souls and all of our energy, and not realizing how much of ourselves, we take so busy taking care of other people that we're not taking care of ourselves. And so I know that with you and your approach and the framework that you use, you talk a lot about, self-care and building emotional resiliency and social emotional learning. So, let's talk a little bit about that. It not creeping up on you, right? It's not an all of a sudden thing. what are some of those early signs that people should be recognizing so that we won't find ourselves? When earlier when we first met, I'm not one to always tell my own story, but I've learned along the way that people need to hear that. And as I began to build this platform, and it was one. Oh my God, I always give this lady a shout out. It was Andrina. I did her podcast maybe like 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And the way that she had to sell, I literally confessed my whole life. But as an educator, I also transitioned out after 20 years. I transitioned out because I was burnt out. But one of the things I like when you came to me and we were talking about your son, you were like, Krista, this is not to get people to transition out. We found ways to help. We're finding ways to help them with solutions so that they don't get burnt out, right? In my own journey, I found myself sitting at my mama's house at the age of 37, here, Dr. Taylor, with all these successes in my education career, sitting at my mama's house, crying on the couch, trying to figure out what just happened, right? I was totally burnt out and over it at that time. And I still have never left education, but I do different things to impact it now, right? And still teach and support in a different way. But going back to that question that I had for you, it's not just something that pops up overnight, this burnout, right? So in your own journey, what was really happening during that period where you were so busy trying to make sure your school was number one and taking care of everybody else and making it just, what was really happening to you that now looking back, that if you had noticed the signs, it would have been maybe a different direction? But we're going to say this. I'm going to say this. That all heroes have origin stories just like supervillains, right? Right. So even though you can look back on it and say, okay, I would have changed this or I would have noticed this, this is what propels you to do the work that you do today. Because again, Danita is not about the person. She's not the person to say, you should transition out of education. Like that was literally her message to us as speakers, right? We're not here to get people out of education. We want to keep good teachers in, but we want to make sure that we're helping them, providing them, equipping them with strategies to be able to win and succeed and take care of themselves. So what was your...
I'm so, Dr. Christie, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That right there, if there are so many people who are in a state of burnout and do not know it. They're running, doing their things, accomplishing their goals, and they don't pay attention to the signs. And that was me. I was doing all the things. I was when I got to work, I would go to work and I would run, do all the things, stay at work and close the building with the custodian. Not taking care of myself, but doing all the work. And doing that repetitively, especially when you are working in an environment that can be stressful, which is okay if you have tools, strategies, frameworks to deal with the stress, but and to recognize the stress. So it is so important that this conversation is had more often, because so many professionals, just because they're successful in doing all the things, does not mean that they are well. And I did not know I wasn't well. I began to get illnesses, sick, anxiety. People who are experiencing burnout, they may sometimes they can't even go into work. They may not be able to get one foot out the bed and the other one into that car, into that building, to be able to deal with the stressors, especially if there is added toxicity on top of that. And not being in tune with yourself enough to give yourself the grace to even experience emotions. You're human, I am human. And when I put others first consistently, day after day, when I was still working in an environment where I had to deal with toxicity, still transforming that environment, that right there, that formula, it's a formula for burnout. And if more conversations are not had like this, professionals are not going to take the time to say, hold on, let me look at myself, and let me do a self-reflection to see if I'm setting myself up for burnout. So those are some of the things I experienced. Some of the professionals that I've worked with, talked with. There was one woman who she would go into work and she would start to work, and then she would get sick and she would go into her office. She would retreat because of the amount of she had some extra stress. Okay. And without a framework, without some support, without the knowledge of some strategies, resources, and tools that's going to help her to maneuver through that stress, eventually it turns into overwhelm, mental exhaustion, burnout. If you don't take the time to identify what the stressors are, then those stressors are going to be there and keep stressing you and grow, and you don't get to manage them the way you like.
There was something that you said when we were doing, and I cannot remember it to this day, because when I'm talking to people about burnout, it's always going to be, because burnout is really, from the scientific sense, really allostatic overload, right? When your body's just in this function. But it was just something that you said about, because we like overcome burnout, but it was something that you said about balance that I can never remember, but it's always in the back of my mind, because the truth is that some of these stresses and stuff are never going to go away, right? It was like work-life balance or work-life, it's something that you said.
Because, you know what? I think that was one of the guest speakers, Dr. DeBose. I think she said, because I always talk about the elusive work-life balance, but Dr. DeBose said it's work-life harmony.
Yeah.
It's not going to be balanced. You can't really ever perfectly balance it. It's just harmonious, where it works, where things flow, at an ebb and flow, whether it's, up, down, but it's harmonious.
Yeah, I've been trying to remember that, because it's so true, right? Like, even though, like, when we're teaching these types of workshops on burnout, we'll use the common terminology like work-life balance. But the truth is, but that statement made me start to give a disclaimer, like, hey, I'm using this term, work-life balance. But the truth is this stuff is never going to go away, right? Teachers, or educators, period. You are in the classroom all day. You're at the school. You are dealing with maybe 25 or less or 30 or more people who are little people who are zapping your energy. You're dealing with the pressures, even though we love them, and I'm speaking as a K-4 teacher when I was back in those days, right? Even though we love them, it takes a lot to be able to teach and engage young people, right? And then you're dealing with all of the pressure that's associated with you having to perform as an educator. And then here you are as a leader, Danita, where you're having to transform culture. I'm going to shift our conversation in just a moment, but I still want to focus a little bit on burnout, because there are a couple of things that I want to make sure, even if we go longer than 30 minutes, that I touch base with you on. Yes. One is, we're going to transition the conversation in a moment to talk about the stresses associated with, as a leader, transforming cultures, because we were having a conversation prior to recording, and I was telling you about how my approach to coaching has really transitioned to change your mindset, change your organization. Something I forgot to have said that I thought was fantastic, forgot to wrote down, but it's really right. And I'm transitioning out of that, of transforming, the traditional career coaching model of my clients coming to me for this transactional type of, and I've never really been that type of coach. Because clients come to me for this transactional career branding stuff. I started to ask questions like, okay, you say you want a resume, you want a new job, what's really going on, right? And then we take a deep dive and we find out, like, hey, this person is burnt out. They're looking for, another opportunity, or maybe they've been looking for a job for a while and cannot find one. So, and then as I'm listening to them talk, I'm learning about the hamster wheel that they're on, that is mindset, right? And I've taken that same concept and moved it into how I deal with organizations from an organizational resiliency and OD standpoint, and talking about shifting cultures, right? And I have my own framework, which we discussed a little bit about, of how we're going to be able to do that using DEIA and REBT techniques. So shifting back to this discussion of Oh, and the third thing I want to make sure we talk about is the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship a little bit, right?
Woo!
So I want to shift back to this discussion on burnout, right?
Yes.
And if I, we're both educators, we have transitioned out to be able to go back. We transitioned out to go back and help. So we want to be clear about that. We don't want good teachers leaving, right? We transitioned out, but we came back to help in the way that we help in each of our niches and ways that we support. But if I'm coming to Danita, if I'm coming to Manifest Education Solutions Group, and I'm saying I'm burnt out, I'm a high performing woman, I'm burnt out, or I want you to facilitate some type of workshop for my school, to talk about this stuff. What is the experience like? Let's go, like even to go on a retreat. Give me one or two elements of this framework or approach that you don't give it all away for free.
No.
But give me one or two elements of this approach so that people can understand what is that experience going to look like when they're coming to you to get this support.
Yes. So with the framework, no matter if we are working on building this and integrating this framework into your culture, no matter if we're doing it actually on site in the building or if we are away at a retreat, it's still the same experience as far as making sure that we understand that the goal here is to lead from a place of wholeness and a place of wellness. And so that's where we're going to start off. And we're going to be doing some things where we identify stressors, like we talked about earlier. And we're going to be doing some practices like mindfulness and meditation and mindful movement to be able to make sure that our bodies are well, that our minds are clear, that we are in tune with our emotions. We're able to identify our emotions so we can move in a regulated behavior. But those experiences that we have when we're working together, they're all about building up that foundation of being whole and being well and being hyper-focused on self-care and disciplined about self-care. And so we're going to explore those types of things so we can see how that transitions into you being a whole leader and that leadership development then flowing into your team. And then we go into the experiences that we then transfer those experiences. We just started off with the leader. We go ahead and we allow the whole team to experience it. So then the adults all are focusing on leading and teaching and being educators from a place of wholeness. And then that changes the whole dynamic of the culture to see the adults. You can see when Miss such and such don't like Miss such and such. You can tell those dynamics, and as you get to do the kind of work like with restorative practices, where we're sharing, we're learning to listen and empathize, and those types of things, you see the change in the framework of the stature of people and their face. Sometimes their jaws just kind of relax a little, the stress kind of softens and they feel heard, they feel seen, they walk away with concrete strategies. And I did a professional development in January, and the feedback I got was that they had hope. They felt like there was hope. And that right there, the experiences that we went through that day, the activities that we went through, the growth, the engagement that we went through, it led to them saying, we have hope. And that right there is phenomenal. That's monumental to be able to say this experience that I had is going to give me hope to take back into my organization, to be able to go forward and fulfill the mission and fulfill the cause.
Yeah, I just am just so in admiration of the work that you do, because I just really love that. I see it's like this like little infomercial pops up on my Facebook every 5 minutes about, are you an educator and you're tired of being an educator and you need to leave? You've probably seen that saying. And I'm like, I'm not here to encourage you to leave something that you clearly, because we go into education and we're passionate about it. Now, you might find other ways to contribute like we are, right? We find other ways to contribute and connect. But if all your life you wanted to be an educator and you're passionate about what you do, and you find yourself at a point of burnout, then it's connecting with organizations like Manifest Education Solution Group to help you recenter how you think, because sometimes we just need that sense of connectiveness to know that, one, you're not alone in the process, you're not alone in the experience. What you're experiencing is happening across so many educational institutions, and not just in K through 12, it's happening in higher education as well. I also just am in admiration because, we had an opportunity to talk before this, and we have different approaches. So I use, there's some mindfulness in it, but it is more so conversations facilitated around DEIA to get people to that place of those uncomfortable, right? Having those uncomfortable conversations that we focus on helping to shift the culture. And part of my research includes, like, hey, if you're Dr. Taylor's not going to do it, but if you're an organization who's looking to shift your culture, utilizing the framework that we use here at WORxK Solutions, you also will need to incorporate some levels of mindfulness in this process, right? Because it's not just about facilitating the conversations around the DEI and having those challenging conversations to initiate change. I can give all the statistics associated about improving employee engagement, but holistically, when employees feel like they're supported, it improves engagement, right? And that encompasses you making an effort to incorporate, mindfulness and work-life balance into the lives of your employees as part of the whole discourse. So we talk about this in my forthcoming book, right? Again, Dr. Taylor is not going to be the person that, does the mindfulness piece, because I'm working a different avenue, right? But that research shows how important it is for holistically developing and shifting the culture of your organization to make sure that you provide access to EAP programs, do the work around mindfulness, because it's not just about the conversations that we have about DEIA, that I'm using it as a framework to teach emotional intelligence and resiliency, where you are using that mindfulness personal. Let's talk a little bit about culture shift, right? Y'all, this podcast is going to go a little bit long because me and Danita got a lot to talk about, but we can go more than that, okay? But, here you are, this leader, and you're brought into this difficult situation, and you said most people were gone in a year or less than that, right? And you stayed 7 years. And sometimes we often will speak from the top, and this is going to be a top-down conversation. I don't even want to claim it as say top-down, but I would say somebody who's at the top of the leadership chain sharing perspective, real perspective, now that you've done that and been through that experience. Because sometimes I like to be what I call an individual contributor, because I got too many jobs. I'm still in the military. I got this business that I'm going. So for my full-time job, I'm completely cool with being an individual contributor. But because I've served in leadership roles, I understand my role and dynamic as a contributor. When I look at that, I don't look at it from a silo perspective, right? And sometimes from an employee standpoint, when we're going through the process of change, we're really looking at it from the perspective of what's in our purview. But as a leader, holistically the dynamics of what's happening, and you're going to experience some resistance, right? So I want to talk a little bit about, what was this experience like for you to have to shift an organizational culture? And now that you have this business where you are focused on burnout, but I want you to do what I do. I want you to connect that to how what you do when your business helps to drive organizational culture and change. Because I hear you saying people are leaving here with hope. And guys, you can't shift no organizational culture without giving people something to buy into and hope.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So when we are, and I'm sorry, tell me the question again, Dr.
So it's just sharing your experience is leading organizational change from a top-down perspective. Like, what is it that leaders are seeing that I, as an individual contributor, because I'm a teacher in my classroom, so I'll take from that simple, right? What are you seeing, the dynamics that you're seeing play out that I don't necessarily see? So when I'm resistant to that change, why is it so important that I try to understand the leader's perspective, right? Because the leader's trying to understand my perspective. And then the second part of that is yes, you're doing this mindfulness work, right, to prevent burnout and so, but the work that you do, statistics show that it also supports organizational change. And the mere fact that people are leaving the event with hope, that's the first step, right? Because you got to build
Mm-hmm.
coalitions. That's kind of 8-step approach. I think it's like step number 2, build a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that experience of facilitating change, and then how you can now take what you know now in terms of your work in mindfulness and interweave that together to help organizational leaders.
Well, going back to what was that book? I know you read. We all read it. Who Moved My Cheese? Is that the book?
Yes.
So, when we have change, of course, you can expect it. A leader automatically expects there's going to be a percentage.
Yeah.
There's going to be a percentage that are all in gung ho at first, like, okay, the Miss Turner said, we believe Miss Turner brought this to us, and they're going to go right with it. And then there's some that are just kind of looking like, show me what you got. Show me how this is going to work. And then there's some, they are absolute naysayers, and the negative Nancy's and negative Nates, they are going to do everything that they can to try to make it not happen. They are going to make sure that that cheese does not move, that things stay the same. They're okay with the status quo. So as a leader, looking at that dynamic, looking at those different pockets, you have to make sure that when you are changing the culture of the building, you're keeping each of those in mind, because it's okay if we have someone that's negative, that's not on board at first. That's okay. I don't mind that. And that's okay from a leader's perspective. But when you're talking about organizational change, the leader has to bring in and create a venue, a space for those people not on board to experience and taste what success would look like if they did get on board. Creating structures in the building that allow the different dynamics to interact and mingle with one another. Just like with teaching, you want to mix up your groups sometimes.
Exactly.
So you want to mix them up so they can learn from one another, so they can hear how others are thinking, so they can hear how others are feeling and perceiving. And while they may not engage or participate at first, they're picking up something, and they will either come along and join the bus, or they won't, and they'll still reap the benefits, because they're looking and learning, and you're able to still transform the culture and create the expectation that they fit in into that organization's. If what you're doing is supporting the mission of your building, looking at each of those categories of people, those buckets of people, the overall picture when you're creating organizational change, that's the priority. It's just making sure that you keep that in mind, and making sure that you create different learning situations, different professional development situations, different experiences that allow each group to grow within your goal of creating that change, and allowing them to experience how to apply that growth in different situations. It's important that the leader, when they're changing the culture of the building, that they remind their team that we are all of us adults up in this building. We're not here for us. We're here for the babies. So with that being said, looking at organizational change, that's the goal. The babies are the goal. And that's the umbrella. Everything else that's creating the change in the organization needs to fit up under that umbrella. And if not, then it needs to go, which is the name of my framework, SNP. It's got to go. Cut out anything that does not serve you or your organizational wellness.
So I want people tuning into this to understand the different dynamics and the element of what it takes to facilitate change, to really be a leader that's leading this type of cultural shift. Because again, Danita and I are both approaching this. I don't know if you use it under the umbrella for you for shifting organizational change, but you are telling your story through that framework of your own experiences of leading change, right? But from the standpoint of both of what we do is, it starts with the individual person before it becomes part of the organizational culture, right? So whether we're using a DEI framework or the SNP framework, that we're starting with individual behavior change and recognizing our contribution to not only how we are engaging with self-care or self, right, but also how that contributes to the bigger picture of the organization, the organization's culture and climate. Now, we've talked a lot about burnout. We've talked about leading change, and let's talk about a final change. We both shifted into entrepreneurship, and we know it's not easy, right? So this is a career podcast. So guys, if you're listening, you learned 3 different things today, right? We got 3 different pieces here because we both shifted into entrepreneurship, and it looks good on the outside. We can make it look good, but that is change within itself, and making this big leap of faith. I want to talk a little bit about like what inspired you. Obviously, I know what inspired you. At what point after this was over, you said, okay, I'm going to start Manifest Education Solutions Group. And then what has this journey been like for you? And as we round out our conversation today, what you're going to give some wisdom, but I also want you to just this end of this segment to give some feedback and inspiration for entrepreneurs. But then we'll still give some tidbits at the end of your general wisdom, right? Because we've talked about a lot of transition in this episode.
Excuse me. Yes. So as far as this entrepreneur route, I when I told you, like, I had stepped away from education, I lost my passion for leadership because of the burnout. And so when I stepped away, I thought I stepped away, but it's part of me, so I would still continue to hear the struggle. I would still continue to hear about women who wanted to, literally wanted to walk off the figurative ledge. I've had to do that, help someone to make a different decision and to stay in the game. And, I started to hear more and more situations. One educator thought that, maybe she would be better off gone and her kids would be able to, it would be better off if she was gone because of the stress what she was dealing with at work. She wouldn't have to deal with that and her kids would be able to be okay. It was a lot. I won't go into it anymore, but the more I came across those type of situations, I was like, oh, no, I got to get back in the game. I have to get back in the game. I need to come back in and I need to help support. I need to help change this. This is not okay. Why is everyone walking around like this is okay? They're functioning in this toxicity. Let's shake this up. So I'm like, oh, no, that I'm going to be a wellness warrior. I'm going to talk about organizational wellness. I'm going to talk about wholeness. I'm going to talk about personal wellness. I'm going to talk about you making sure that you, it is, when I tell you, get me ticked off, sit up there and be messing with some adults, these professional adults trying to lead these babies, and they're getting sick trying to serve our future. We have adults getting sick because of the things going on in the schools, that they're not able to reach the babies. And so that got me riled up. I'm like, oh no, that's where Manifest Education Solutions Group came about. I said, we're going to manifest some solutions up in this education setting. So that's how that came about. And that led me down the road of the entrepreneur path. COVID hit and I'm like, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? What's going on? Tell me what to do, Lord. And he came to me and he gave me this. He gave me this mission, this new calling into entrepreneurship, to be able to go out and reach masses, to reach greater audiences, to reach greater amount of people, and to support them and to serve. I'm a servant. And so that's what he's called me to do. And that's how I ended up in the entrepreneur role.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something that will blow your mind in terms of how I came back, because I remember leaving education. I said, I'm done. And I came to DC and I was in a different role, a project management role, right? Mm-hmm. Where I'm now building out programs for, education centered programs. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm completely done with this. I still teach part-time. So this is really, I started my business in 2016, and then I ended up taking a break. In 2022, I landed a job, which I thought was going to be my dream job, but it was absolutely horrible. But I said, okay, I learned a lot from the job. But what I said was, Lord, I ain't going back to education. I done made it now. Thank you. And I tried to work this job, and I remember my mom and sister like, Christy, you need to quit. You need to leave. And I'm like, here I am, a career coach now. I'm like, but I got to have a good government job. You know, you got to have a good government job to apply, So fast forward, that job did not work out. And then I found myself in November of 2022 without a job. And there's really anybody who does not know that nobody knows this story. So I'm literally talking about it. So in 2022, November 2022, I found myself without a job. And I said, okay, what can I do? And guess what I had to go back to, Danita, because I was getting ready to get deployed. I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to teach. So I was going to substitute just because I was getting ready to leave anyway. I kid you not. I applied for this job. And it was a substitute job. I get to the interview and the guy was like, he interviewed me to teach 5th grade, or it was a small school. And I said, you realize that this is an interview for a substitute job that you posted. This is not an interview for a full-time job. He was like, oh my goodness. Well, can you come in tomorrow anyway? So, no, can you come in next week? I said, okay. I go in the next week. It's a small school. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's a small little one-room school, private school. And I introduce myself, and I kid you not, I say, I tell the kids, good morning, my name is Miss Taylor. The kids go, you're not Miss Taylor. I said, I think I know my name, because immediately I'm going to start with the sarcasm. You're not Miss Taylor. Come to find out. Now, this is how God got this set up. Here I am telling you, thank you for the government job that I didn't like, right? That I'm like, oh, I was trying to go hang on to it. The kids telling me, you're not Miss Taylor. Come to find out that the teacher who I was replacing, her name was Miss Taylor. Right? And she literally had transitioned out, and it was such a quick turnaround. They didn't even really know what happened to their teacher had left. And here I am coming up like I'm Miss Taylor. They're like, you're not Miss Taylor. God had it set up that the very teacher that I replaced, that was her name. Within 3 days, they gave me a key to the building. It was like, can you just stay and teach here full time? I said, God, if you want me to be in education, just say that. Because that's an example of, if you listen to this podcast, we talk about our source. So my source is God in Christ, right?
Yes.
That's an example of you telling God, this is what it's going to be. He laughing at you and said, okay, well, let me show you what it is, right? Because I'm like, I'm done with this. And then that same month is when I started the business back, right? So from November 2022 to now where we are with this podcast, it's an example of God shifting you into your purpose and getting alive. Because I really said I'm done teaching, and not only did he send me back, he sent me to a classroom with a teacher who had the same last name as me. Kids didn't even miss a beat. It was like, you Miss Taylor, right? I was like, I'm not that Miss Taylor. I had to catch on to what was happening, right? I was like, why these kids talking about I don't know who I am? And then I look on the board and I see Miss Taylor everywhere and all her stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's God, that you got a sense of purpose and alignment. So if you are going through transition and change, keep an open mind with your faith walk. Don't ever tell your source, don't tell God what you gonna do and what you ain't gonna do, because what he gonna do is what he did to me and laugh at you. All right, because he is the source of where we are. And so this entrepreneur thing is about trust, right? It's about building and having faith. I got my website open right now, trying to edit and learn, right? Just learning the art of, had to do all this research to put together a framework, learning all this stuff. So keep an open mind, guys. Danita, this has been a great conversation. All right. We talked about so many things. There's so many tidbits of wisdom that I forgot to take my notes. So Jules, if you're listening, you'll have to go back and re-listen to this podcast so that I can go back and take some notes and share them with you, because we're gonna, we use this for clips and other things to share with our audience. And so as we wrap up this podcast today, this is how I know this is really a real conversation. Because one, we don't went over 30 minutes. Two, I'm like, I gotta rewatch it myself so I can. as we wrap up this conversation today, share a little bit with our audience about what you have coming up. Do your shameless plug, girl, and how can people find you and connect with you? We will say that all of her stuff is going to be, we'll make sure that all of her stuff is in the description on the YouTube and all of our major social media posts about this event when it does air. But how does, where can people connect with you and find you, Danita?
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Before I say that, I want to piggyback on something you said really quickly. This is something that I would like to share with your audience. If I had not been in such a toxic environment and dealing with all the things, I would not have set a goal of building a healthy work culture. I would not have reached out and researched and found a restorative practices trainer that trained me, who I appreciate so much. He trained me. I learned so much that then allowed me to achieve success. But that success, those trials back then, and the things that came from the trials and tribulations of growing through that, it brought me here today. God brought all of that around to build me up to be able to be here today in today's calling. So I would just share with your audience that whatever it is, if whatever the struggle is right now, count it all joy. It's what you do with that struggle and how you bring it back around to be able to turn that lemon into lemonade and to be able to support and serve and honor others. So, that's what I believe that we're here for. We're not here for ourselves. And so if you are going through something, if there is a struggle, don't get stuck in that moment. Ask, okay, God, what you got for me? What do you want me to do with this? So that's the tidbit. That's the feedback that I would have, because I didn't at that time have that mindset. But some things that are going on with Manifest Education Solutions Group. First, you can find me on Instagram at Danita Turner _manifest. And then on Facebook, Manifest Education Solutions Group. And some things that we have going on this year, we have retreats. One of the things that we provide, one of the services we provide wellness experiences. And like I mentioned earlier, we bring wellness experiences on site, but we also have some retreats coming up. One will be in Miami in August and in Arizona in December. And so with these retreats in August, it's the Burnout to Brilliance Leadership Wellness Retreat. And what that is that's where women in leadership are coming to get their cup filled. Okay. We are there to pour into leadership. We are there to be hyper focused on providing you with self-care, with reflective mindset work, so you can manage your mind and get in that leadership mindset to get your armor back on with concrete, actionable steps and strategies to take back into your organization. But while you're in Miami, we're going to love on you. You're going to eat well. We're going to have fun. I like to laugh.
I'm struggling up here with the eating, right?
Oh, I know, girl. I feel for
Miami, girl. So if you please go on this retreat, y'all, because you be like me up here hungry, up in the north hungry. Or you can go to Miami on a retreat and you can learn how to be well and eat good. Okay.
Yes. I love it. So everything we're going to be doing is intentional. So please join us in Miami for the Burnout to Brilliance Leadership Wellness Retreat. I also have a mastermind coming up called Fizzled Out to Fired Up. So that focus is on like-minded individuals, like-minded men and women in leadership coming together, me leading you through a framework again and allowing you to come together, and then we formulate a strong action plan that you're able to take back to your building and incorporate with your leadership teams, your building, your culture and climate, whatever organization, whatever team in your organization you think that you need to train the trainer with. We're going to be in that group. We're going to be doing some work as leaders, and that mastermind is a 6-week mastermind that will be coming up also. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Hey guys, this has been an excellent conversation. Like I said, I got to go back and rewatch it so I can take notes so that I can actually make sure we have the video clips for this. But you guys, so I want to talk a little bit. I want to give this disclaimer because if you're listening to this in April, guys, we're going to be changing the format of how we do the podcast. I'm just adding this on the end. We are shifting, and April is going to be the end of our first season. So when we come back, we're going to be in a different format because we have had an opportunity to learn and embrace it. That's what Career Coach RX has been all about, right? Mindset and career coach, mindset and transforming careers, but it's about transforming your mindset and learning in the process, right? And so we're excited about as we approach the end of our first season, and we'll be back around July, stronger and amped up and ready to go. What you say, fired up? And we're going to call this episode, just so you know, From Burnout to Brilliantly Empowering Educators to Find Purpose and Fulfillment, because it has been so inspirational talking to you, Danita. Again, you can find her on our social media platforms, on our website, Manifest Education Solution Group. Don't forget to follow us across all social media platforms at WORxK Solutions and Career Coach RX. Website is WORxSolutions.com. That is WORxK Solutions.com, or you can just use CareerCoachRx.com, whichever rolls off the tongue easier. Thanks for tuning in today, and we look forward to you joining us in season 2 of what is now the WORxK Solutions Career Coach RX podcast. Thanks.